Vive la nation, vive la revolution, the untold story of the women who fought for liberty and paid the price. In the popular imagination, the French Revolution is often remembered as a tale of two cities. There's Paris and there's Versailles. And it's a story of storming and storming, of angry mobs seizing the royal family and bringing them to Paris and guillotining Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. But at the center of that action are two cities, and both of those cities are missing one thing: people. Yes, there were men who stormed those bastions of power, but this was also the work of women. Welcome to my channel. Today we are going to talk about the women of the French Revolution. To really understand the French Revolution, you have to understand the role of women. The French Revolution was the first modern revolution, and as such, it has all of the trappings of revolutions that followed after. It had pamphlets and broadsides, sure, but it also had newspapers and regular publications. It had secret societies for organization, underground printing presses, and yes, public buildings with graffiti on the walls. It was a time when ideas could spread faster than ever before. And it was during this time that the French people began to read about the American Revolution and the ideals of liberty and equality that went along with it. And they liked it. They liked it a lot. The French had been fighting in the American Revolution since the beginning, supplying troops for the patriot cause. But it wasn't just the ideals of independence that crossed the Atlantic. It was the ideals of equality as well. This was not lost on the women of France, who saw in this revolution across the sea an opportunity to advance their own fight for equality. The French Revolution began in 1789. In July of that year, rumors began to spread around Paris that the king's troops were preparing to attack the city. So a mob of Parisians, both men and women, seized the Hôtel des Invalides, an old building used to house retired soldiers. The crowd took weapons from the armories inside and marched to the Bastille, a prison that housed political prisoners. The crowd wanted those prisoners set free, and they wanted the Bastille's weapons to help arm themselves. So they attacked the Bastille, killing several guards and freeing 7 prisoners. The Bastille fell that day, and the fall of the fortress symbolized the fall of royal absolutism in France. But it was not only the symbolism that attracted the crowds that day. The attack on the Bastille actually worked. Many citizens of Paris took up arms that day and marched on Versailles to bring the royal family back to Paris under guard. And again, they were a mixed company. Men and women marching together to confront the king and force him back to Paris. As for the king, he didn't want to go to Paris. He didn't want to go anywhere near Paris. But his wife, Marie Antoinette, convinced him to do it. She thought that if they showed up in Paris, it would show the revolutionaries that they were reasonable and that maybe they could calm things down. But as they traveled into Paris, they found that was not the case. In fact, when the royal family got to Paris, the revolutionaries got angrier and began to demand more and more. And the king and queen found themselves right in the middle of a very tense situation. One of those demanding more was a woman named Olympe de Gouges. Just 3 weeks after the royal family returned to Paris, she published the Declaration of the Rights of Woman and the Female Citizen. It's a pretty fascinating document. You can still read it today and see the parallels between what women in the French Revolution were asking for and what women around the world are still asking for today. It opens with a powerful statement. Women, like men, are born free and equal in rights. Social distinctions can be based only on common good. The document goes on to list the rights of women, their right to property, to education, to fair wages, even to divorce. And it ends with a call to action, urging women to exercise their rights and demanding that they be allowed to participate in politics. Now, we should take a moment to remember that the Declaration of the Rights of Woman and the Female Citizen was written by a playwright. That's what she did. She wrote plays. And while her declaration was groundbreaking for its time, her real contribution to the revolution was in the theater. During the revolution, she used her plays to criticize the Jacobin, political group that opposed the more radical revolutionaries. After the Reign of Terror ended, she became a Girondin, a member of the more moderate party. When Robespierre came to power, he turned on her because he didn't like her criticism, and he sent her to the guillotine. And she wasn't the only one. From the beginning, women played a huge role in the French Revolution. They marched on Versailles. They carried weapons, and they attacked the Bastille. But the revolution turned against them in the end, just like it turned against Olympe de Gouges. You see, once the revolution turned violent, it turned on everyone. The streets of Paris became a battleground between different factions. At one point, armed women took over Paris and executed 5 suspected aristocrats. Later, they would turn on the revolutionary leaders themselves. On September 2nd, 1793, a group of women attacked the Paris jail, same Paris jail where the storming of the Bastille had taken place 4 years before. They dragged 13 suspected royalists out of the prison and killed them. 2 days later, they took the 5 leaders of the rival political party, the Girondins, to the guillotine. The last of the Girondins were executed in 1794. Even the most radical of the revolutionaries understood that they could not win without the support of the women. Revolutionary leader Jean-Paul Marat urged the men of France to remember that the women had stormed the Bastille with them, and that they would need the women's support to keep the revolution alive. Others weren't so keen on letting the women take part. They created organizations, and these organizations called themselves sans-culottes, or without breeches. Why? Because they wore trousers instead of the knee-length breeches that the aristocrats wore. These groups organized the poorer members of society, both men and women, and they got involved in every aspect of the revolution. They participated in the storming of the Bastille, and they helped the revolutionaries seize the Tuileries Palace. In late 1789, some of the sans-culottes demanded the abolition of the monarchy altogether. They wanted a republic. And by 1792, when it became clear that the war with Austria and Prussia was not going well for the French, the sans-culottes grew even more radical. They demanded the execution of the royal family. The sans-culottes were responsible for the September massacres in 1792. When the prisons in Paris were overrun and suspected enemies of the revolution were murdered, when the monarchy fell and the First French Republic was established in 1792, the sans-culottes continued to agitate for change. Their influence helped push the National Convention to put the king on trial. And once it became clear that he was found guilty and would be executed, the sans-culottes helped to ensure that the execution was carried out. The sans-culottes were led by Jacques-Pierre Brissot, a journalist and politician. He called for the execution of the king, but he worried that the violence of the revolution would lead to tyranny. And in the end, he was right. The sans-culottes helped bring down the monarchy, but they also helped bring down the revolution itself. After the king was executed, the Committee of Public Safety took over and instituted the Reign of Terror, when thousands of suspected enemies of the revolution were sent to the guillotine. And this is where the sans-culottes lost their way. As the Reign of Terror picked up steam, the sans-culottes became less about working people and more about terrorizing people. By 1794, the Reign of Terror was over, and the sans-culottes would eventually fade away as well. The sans-culottes might have failed, but the fight for women's rights did not end with the French Revolution. The French Revolution had a profound impact on the women's rights movement around the world. The ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity inspired women to demand the right to vote, the right to own property, and the right to participate in public life. The legacy of the French Revolution can be seen in the women's rights movements of the 19th and 20th centuries. The French Revolution was a time when women fought for their rights. It was a time when they demanded equality and justice, and it was a time when they paid the ultimate price for their beliefs. So next time you think about the French Revolution, don't forget about the women. Don't forget about their courage, their determination, and their sacrifice. And remember that it was their participation that made the French Revolution the first modern revolution. Thank you for watching. To learn more about the French Revolution, check out the additional resources.